Caracas. The third one is from the Crimea area. And notice the very complicated coloration and tight weaving. The Paracas were the finest weavers in the Americas. And how could this be that they were a crude culture and then all of a sudden they developed all of these
Hello and welcome to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and in this video I want to share with you some of my favourite examples of the evidence for ancient forms of high technology. From the machining marks and construction techniques used in megalithic construction, to the measurable precision and symmetry of ancient artifacts, big and small, these enduring mysteries are difficult to explain from within our orthodox view of human history. Often wrought from the very hardest forms of natural stone, these objects and the techniques used to make them represent a class of out-of-place artifacts that seems far beyond the known capabilities and the tools of the ancient civilizations we attribute them to. These astonishing precision objects undeniably come to us from the distant past. They are found on ancient sites. Yet often they seem far superior to the work that's around them, the cruder and far less precise signature common to so many Bronze Age or primitive civilizations. Did these same civilizations also possess some form of unknown advanced capability, or the advanced tools required to make such objects? I suppose it's possible, but there is an utter lack of evidence for any such tools in the archaeological record, nor any record of them in these civilizations' own histories. Is it possible that these objects are far older and that the history of civilization on this planet is longer than we ever believed? Could the ancients, at least as we know them, have inherited some of these artifacts and architecture? Could they have found them to be sacred, incorporated them into their cultures, and used them for ritual or for ceremony? After all, our own modern civilization has inherited the very same objects, and we still find them to be sacred. We still use them for ceremony, even today. The technology that's evident in this type of stonework is generally dismissed as mostly irrelevant by mainstream archaeology, yet it's frequently found to be utterly remarkable by anyone with an open mind and the will to apply a basic analysis of the engineering principles that must have been used in their construction. Many researchers and experts from the past couple of centuries have done just this, and they often report being utterly awestruck by these ancient accomplishments and left wondering just how Bronze Age or other relatively primitive cultures managed such feats. From the luminary Sir Flinders Petrie in the 1800s, one of the very first to apply engineering principles to the evidence for precision stonework in ancient Egypt, to a long list of modern engineers like Christopher Dunn, stonemasons like Yusuf Aoun, architects like Randall Carlson, and many other researchers, all with expert understanding of construction techniques. They all find it very difficult to reconcile these achievements with the known capability of the ancient cultures our academics insist created them. Their findings support the idea that these could well be in fact out-of-place objects, and that they require a level of technology that is far beyond that of the cultures that we attribute them to. Along with my own observations, my own travels, it is on this basis, on the opinion of a long list of qualified experts, and not those of mainstream archaeology or anthropology, that I too believe this category of stonework to be evidence for unknown and ancient forms of high technology. On topics like precision engineering, tool making, and large-scale construction, it's these people we should turn to for truly expert opinion, rather than those of tenured academics who write textbooks about the people, practices, traditions, and the daily life of ancient cultures. Archaeologists don't tend to write books about precision engineering, and it by no means degrades the profession by saying that many of its members generally have only a limited interest and certainly no professional expertise in construction technologies. Even when the engineering or technological aspects of objects are addressed by mainstream archaeology, it's always cast in the light of the known capability of ancient civilizations, often leading to circular logic that goes nowhere. Something like this, an example. The Old Kingdom granite monoliths like columns and boxes must have been made by copper chisels and pounding stones, because that's what we know that they had. There's no proof they did it any differently. Meanwhile, analysis of the objects themselves and the technology needed to make them is direct evidence for such an advanced capability. After all, we have the objects, which is the result of the tools, and we have the markings, which is the signature from the tools. Yet this evidence is dismissed because there have been no tools found. Therefore, the Egyptians must have made them with copper chisels and pounding stones, because that's what we know that they had. It's a circular argument, and it's a neat way of avoiding addressing the actual evidence for precision and high technology in these ancient objects. Just ask, where are the tools, and walk away. Never mind the quantifiable proof that we have of their use that is represented by the objects themselves. This is why archaeologists rarely consider the manufacturing of such precision objects, because the answers risk upsetting the status quo of the story of history.
If you're asking about the analysis of the inside of the vases, we only dealt with the contents. We haven't worked on the techniques used to make the vases.
If the Old Kingdom Egyptians didn't have the capability to actually do this work, then who did? And when? Many mainstream archaeologists and anthropologists are deeply vested in maintaining this story of history. They derive their academic power and authority as the experts on this story and of all of its aspects. The motive to protect it and to resist change is somewhat understandable, if admittedly frustrating at times. After all, resisting change and maintaining the status quo is the very nature of establishment. Before we get into the specifics and examples, I want to set up a little bit of context, as there are certainly a lot of interpretations of just what ancient high technology could mean, and statements or terms like this get thrown around quite a lot. In my case, it's pretty specific. I'm talking about the evidence for technology that is not explainable by the tools found in the archaeological record, nor is it explainable by what we know of the capabilities of ancient civilizations. I'm not talking about lasers or spacecraft or mystical energies and crystals. I'm talking about the verifiable and measurable evidence of advanced tooling and machining of very hard types of stone, and the advanced construction methodologies that must have been used in the creation of various forms of ancient megalithic architecture or artifacts. This evidence isn't in every part of ancient civilizations, in fact, far from it. And one of the distinguishing factors that I'll illustrate in this video is exactly this point, that quite often this evidence, all these objects, stand out in stark contrast to the relatively primitive levels of technology in the ancient work that's around them, or even on them, as is the case for much of the hieroglyphs that have been badly scratched into precision-made objects like the boxes and statues from ancient Egypt. I also want to state why I think this set of evidence is important, as it goes against the narrative of the development of civilization as we know it. It's an important part of framing the wider argument, that for a re-evaluation of the roots of human civilization, with the idea that we've both risen high and been struck down by catastrophe before. I've got specific videos on several of the other aspects to this argument, things like the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the extension of the human timeline, or even what the ancients themselves said about their own origins. Both the ancient Egyptians and Sumerians trace their civilizations back tens of thousands of years further than we give them credit for, and you would be hard-pressed to find any ancient culture that didn't have fire, flood, or cataclysm myths in their own origin stories. Events that their advanced gods or ancestors barely lived through, and because of them were forced to restart civilization again. Modern science is validating the evidence for catastrophism and the grains of truth that are contained in these stories. Catastrophism is now part of mainstream Earth science, but its impact has not yet been truly felt when it comes to the cultural implications and the soft sciences of history or archaeology.
With the 1980s, what we see is this acceptance of catastrophism in Earth history, right? And so that by the time we get to the turning of the millennium, right, by the year 2000, catastrophism is now pretty much an accepted paradigm in Earth history, but not necessarily in human history.
Not yet.
This is now, I would say, is the next evolutionary development in catastrophism, is recognizing its role in our human story on Earth. And that leads us directly into the issue of why, for example, we don't find that hard evidence for ancient advanced technological civilizations that the critics are so insistent upon requiring.
Oh, yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
But what they don't understand, and this has become clear to me, talking to them, reading their stuff, seeing them, on various venues, is that they don't understand the scale of these global events.
Right.
They don't understand how extreme the Younger Dryas event and associated foreshocks and aftershocks really were.
I think this evidence for ancient high technology is a vital piece of the overall argument for a re-evaluation of human history and our origins. And to me, it's an indicator for a past that is both longer and far more complex than the one we generally accept. You know, the one that says human civilization only really began around 6,000 years ago. Even saying that at this point sounds a little bit ridiculous to me, but that is indeed still the orthodox position. Without derailing this video, I do want to make a point here, as I'm sure some of you might be thinking, hang on, hasn't the discovery and dating of Göbekli Tepe with its 11,000-year-old radiocarbon dating and deliberate burial, hasn't this pushed back the date for human civilization? You would think so, and I and many others certainly think so, but if you follow the mainstream debate, such as it is, or if you look up the entry for Göbekli Tepe on that bastion of establishment groupthink that is Wikipedia, you'll find that the site is still attributed to Neolithic hunter-gatherer cultures. Mainstream archaeology, you see, rather than risk being wrong about their precious story of history, a story from which derives all of their academic authority and tenure, simply changed their definition of what it means to be a hunter-gatherer. As if one of the largest megalithic sites in the world, with hundreds of expertly made pillars and stone circles, with individual pillars ranging from 10 to 50 tons in weight, as if all of this was made by nomadic tribes of loincloth-wearing savages as some sort of weekend hobby. You know, the boys get together, go camping, get away from the kids, do a bit of rock carving, that type of thing. It's ridiculous. The site obviously requires real civilization to have been built. It obviously requires decades of training and expertise for the quarrying, shaping, and the artwork wrought in the stone. It obviously needed a large population base and diversified, organized culture in order to support such activity. We now know that Göbekli Tepe may have represented something even more important and more profound. Its artwork seems to represent a dating system and might contain a record of the Younger Dryas cataclysm itself, along with other cosmic events of the time. Dr. Martin Sweatman, author of Prehistory Decoded, has discovered a strong link between the artwork at Göbekli Tepe and the alignment of constellations going back in time, including what seems to be a connection to the Younger Dryas comets or cosmic bodies themselves. I've interviewed Martin on this channel, and he has an excellent series of videos on his YouTube channel for anyone that's interested in his work or the science behind the Younger Dryas in general. There's some links to those below, or you could just buy his book. I think that the late Klaus Schmidt, who was the director for the excavation at Göbekli Tepe for many years, I think that he knew that this site represented civilization, but he was very cautious to not risk his archaeological career by coming out and challenging the status quo story of history with a direct claim against it. Instead, he said that it represented a transition from hunter-gatherers to an agricultural society, which to my mind is a roundabout way of calling it civilization. Such is the state of modern archaeology. When new ideas or new data challenge the status quo, things like the evidence for the Younger Dryas or for unexplainable high technology, or even the things ancient cultures said about their own ancestors, these ideas are first ignored, then they're attacked, mostly by attacking the man and not the argument. If attacking the argument fails, then the context around the evidence is twisted, such that it becomes essentially meaningless to the narrative of history. Just look at the treatment Graham Hancock has received by academia throughout his career for the crime of successfully raising such ideas and opening so many minds across the world. Most recently, he was the subject of a full 27 pages of ad hominem and strawman arguments and attacks by Professor John Hoops and the Society of American Archaeology. These articles are mostly aimed at Hancock's new book, America Before, but rather than address the specifics of his arguments head-on, they seek to reset the context around it, framing it all as some sort of fringe esoteric tradition, not worthy of serious consideration. Invoking Bigfoot, ancient aliens, Atlantis, and all number of things that have really nothing to do with Hancock's book, the articles attempt to discredit anything that wasn't written from within the safe spaces of tenured academia as pseudoscience or pseudo-archaeology. Not only that, but Hoops also sees fit to attach the worst type of modern dog-whistling calls for outrage to Hancock's work and to the entire field of non-mainstream history research. I was genuinely appalled when I read this, and I felt the need to deconstruct these articles and their logical fallacies in some depth on one of my recent live streams, and there's a link to that one below. Hoops and his establishment crowd have also been actively working on social media to discredit the Younger Dryas cosmic impact hypothesis as nothing more than the recycling of ancient esoteric comet myths or catastrophist books from the 1800s, written well before the concept of plate tectonics was even known. Yes, people have been talking about comets for a long time, and for good reason, just ask the dinosaurs. But accounts from the past have nothing to do with the modern scientific work that's uncovering the truth of the Younger Dryas event. Hoops chooses to completely ignore the now hundreds of scientific, peer-reviewed papers that have come out since 2007 when the theory was first proposed. And in doing so, he discredits the many dozens of qualified scientists that are behind that work. George Howard and Mark Young have put together a comprehensive list of all of the scientific papers surrounding the Younger Dryas cosmic impact. It's in a bibliography on the Cosmic Tusk website. And that's all the bibliography is. It's a list with links to the individual papers. It includes the papers for the impact hypothesis, which is the majority of papers, and it also includes those against it or critical of the theory. Despite not being involved in any of these papers, nor even in the scientific disciplines that are mostly behind them, Hoops insists on calling this bibliography biased, and from his high seat of academic tenure vocally and repeatedly recommends that, instead of looking at the scientific evidence, the public should only read the entry about the Younger Dryas cosmic impact that is on Wikipedia, as he claims this to be a truly unbiased source. It may not come as a surprise that this Wikipedia entry also strays far from the scientific literature. It invokes Graham Hancock, Ignatius Donnelly, and it suggests the whole theory is a recycled idea from so-called fringe authors, and it only barely stops short of calling the whole thing pseudoscience. Perhaps it says this because it's Professor Hoops himself that has been writing this article. Just click on the revision history of the document on Wikipedia and the proof is right there. It's brazen, I'll give him that, but he really must think that the general public like you and me are pretty stupid, because I don't think I could find a better example of academic establishment bias than this. In another recent live stream, I dug into the history of this document, and George Howard has a great new article up on the Cosmic Tusk that shows just how John Hoops has been trying to discredit the Younger Dryas cosmic impact. Links to both of those are below. Sadly, this isn't an isolated example of establishment bias and manipulation that gets employed in order to maintain the status quo of history. In my documentary on the ancient Egyptian tube drills, I showed how Christopher Dunn confirmed the claims of Flinders Petrie, claims for a spiral groove on the famous drill core number 7, and these grooves indicate advanced technology, and these grooves were both measured and confirmed by Dunn with modern tools. I also show how Dunn exposed the entire establishment argument against Petrie's claim, boiling down to some deliberately manipulated and tilted photographs in a textbook. These photographs were tilted in order to make the groove look horizontal on the page rather than spirals. This actually gets quoted as an authoritative source in other mainstream textbooks. You see, we just can't have new discoveries or scientific evidence upsetting the mainstream narrative. Wikipedia pages get edited, photographs get tilted, and Göbekli Tepe was nothing more than a weekend playground for bored hunter-gatherers. Okay, derailing over. Let's get down to some examples of ancient high technology. I've grouped these examples into categories, and this will be a two-part video in order to cover as many of them as I can, and I want to start with the evidence for machining. By this term, I mean the marks and indications of advanced tools that have been used to cut or shape stone blocks and objects, and these tools are definitely not found in the archaeological record. The examples take the form of saw cuts and machining marks, and tube drill holes and cores, striations and lines of varying fineness that indicate degrees of machining. Many of the objects with such marks come from sites known to exist during the Old Kingdom period of ancient Egypt, or from other parts of the world that also had an equivalent Bronze Age technology, typically with no access to iron or steel tools. The tools that are found that come from these periods are primitive hand tools: flint knives, copper or bronze chisels, adzes, or stone pounders. These do not produce machining marks, and clearly none of them were mechanized or powered. What's more, the Old Kingdom was not thought to have had access to the wheel, yet in many Old Kingdom locations we can see the evidence for precise and powerful tools that certainly operated on principles involving the wheel, and that seem to have cut through incredibly tough material like granite, diorite or basalt with seeming ease. Some of these machining marks left consistent and measurable arcs that we can use to estimate the saw's size, and these tools must have been truly monstrous. They must also have been powered by some mechanism. Perhaps my favourite example of what must have been just a huge circular saw, or perhaps a swing saw, is found at the Old Kingdom site of Abu Sir. This megalithic block of basalt that sits in front of one of the several pyramids on that site looks much like many others that are found here, yet a close examination reveals some astonishing characteristics. The top of this block, although weathered from millennia in the desert, has clearly been cut by a blade that has a very distinctive circular arc to it. It left obvious striations and grooves in its passing, indicating a rapid rate of cutting through this very hard material, and a bit of water poured over the block shows these marks very clearly. The block appears to have not been cut all the way through, something that we are very fortunate to have evidence for, as it also appears to have been a remarkably thin edge, only a few millimeters of material, as evidenced by the lip that is left on the edge of this block. Look at the arc to the saw and just try to imagine the diameter of the tool. If it was indeed a circular saw, it may have been as much as 8 or 9 meters or 25 feet or more in diameter. Some saw cuts that left precise arcs have been estimated by Christopher Dunn to have been made with saws up to 11 meters in diameter, which is over 30 feet. Primitive hand tools made from copper indeed. I think this particular block was never quite finished, and it seems likely to me that many of the other basalt blocks that form part of the megalithic floors and walls on this site were likely cut in a similar fashion, and then they were polished to an astonishing level of flatness, which removed the grooves and the striation marks from the cut. These types of large diameter saws were also used on many other blocks at Abu Sir, and we see their markings in many other places. At Gyges and on other sites, we have actual saw cuts that were started and not finished. The basalt floor to the east of the Great Pyramid has several such marks made into it. A close examination of the granite box inside the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid also reveals the striations and markings of great saws that were used to cut and shape it. Look for the flat surfaces on the top of this box inside the King's Chamber, and also the faint lines that indicate the machining process, that are etched into the side of this box as you enjoy the just epic resonance in this amazing room.
The slabs on the ceiling, just immense. Not less than 60 tons.
60?
At least. Each one of these slabs cannot be less than 60 tons. Maybe more.
We don't even know how far it's going. Well,
And there is the depth.
When it comes to these types of boxes, these giant saws were obviously also used to cut the lids from the same original block of stone that the boxes themselves were shaped from. And in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, there is what's known as the unfinished box. It has a huge saw cut showing how the lid was being removed from the back of the stone block. I've also seen photos of circular saw marks made into stone at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia, although I can't seem to find the photographs that I've seen of them despite searching around a fair bit. Maybe you guys can help me out in the comment section below and point me to some of these examples. It's certainly something that I'll be looking for the next time I get to visit that incredible place. And just as a reminder, using circular saws like this isn't the typical way any civilization quarries stone, right up until we get into the modern mechanized age. In these days, we do indeed use huge circular saws or swing saws or other types of mechanized saws in order to cut granite, but until barely 100 years ago, the technique used in the field to cut through granite was far different and far more primitive. We see these primitive quarrying marks everywhere, as the ancient Egyptian stone monuments have been used as quarries for millennia now. Small hollows are first carved into the rock, usually with steel chisels, and it forms something that looks kind of like a dashed line. You'll see this all over Egyptian sites and on many of the blocks. After this line is carved, wood is inserted into these gaps, and then the wood is wet. The wood expands, the block cracks, hopefully it cracks along the quarry line itself, and there you go, you have yourself a piece of granite. The circular saw marks that have quite clearly been used to cut large blocks of stone don't match any technique known from the ancient world, but they certainly seem to indicate some form of mechanized capability, much like our own. When we see these marks, there is really no mainstream explanation for how they were made in antiquity, other than with the idea of some form of two-man copper or bronze saw being pushed back and forth by a couple of guys using sand or some other abrasive material to slowly, very slowly, grind through the stone. Although this technique will indeed eventually wear away the stone, it's more of a grinding motion than a cutting mechanism, and there are really several problems with the idea that this type of saw made these types of marks. Firstly, the obvious one, it doesn't leave anything like the marks that we find on blocks like the one at Abu Sir, as it's a grinding process, not a cutting process like we see on this block. These marks are all consistent in terms of their radius. This tool wasn't moved around very much in relation to the block. Everything seems to have been held very firmly as the saw progressed through the cut. The very tiny width of the blade, as indicated by the lip at the edge of this cut, makes it nothing short of impossible that such a saw could have been made from a soft material like copper or bronze and still manage to cut through basalt. Then there's the obvious problems. It would simply take far too long to grind through all of these blocks in this way, and many of the blocks that seem to have been cut in this manner are way too large to have been done by hand with primitive tools like copper saws. While this basalt block here at Abu Sir isn't itself that large, consider trying to saw or grind through something that is 10, 11, or up to 20 feet long, or even longer, like the large granite slabs that are in the Great Pyramid, or the great boxes of the Serapeum, and you can quickly see the issues with the idea of doing this type of thing by hand with copper saws. The most befuddling evidence for some form of advanced machining comes from a notorious slab of granite that's found at the Old Kingdom site of Abu Rawash. It has the same circular saw marks, these circular grooves that we saw on the basalt block at Abu Sir, but it also seems to have been subjected to at least a two-stage machining process. The saw has been used to cut horizontally into the block, as we're viewing it in this footage, and it left the same saw cut marks as we saw on the block at Abu Sir. However, it also has a machined lip that's been cut vertically into this cut surface, as if a very large circular saw or wheel was used to cut just a small amount out vertically, shown by this slight yet consistent concave arc to this second cut. This is a very complex mechanical signature. It's not something that could have been made with hand tools, and frankly it bends my mind a little bit trying to imagine just how this series of cuts were made. Christopher Dunn has made an excellent study of this block at Abu Rawash, along with the other evidence for mega machines in his book Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. I plan to produce more detailed investigations into the specifics of these circular saw markings sometime in the future and give it a treatment much like I have done for the tube drills, but my intent in this video is to cover a wide breadth of examples for high technology and to try to not get too lost in the details. Speaking of tube drills or core drills, they're yet another example of machining marks that are not explainable by the tools or techniques in the archaeological record. Yet again, here we have evidence for advanced tools that seem to have cut through tough material like granite at a rate far greater than we could achieve even in modern times. And if you'd like some clarification of that claim, please do watch the documentary about it on my channel. There's a link below. I will add that we do see evidence for core drills or tube drills in other parts of the world, notably South America. Although not a common find, there are many examples of large core drill blocks and holes in the andesite and granite of structures like the Coricancha in Cusco. I've seen reports and images of holes drilled into stone from around the world, including some from Europe, and I think that all of these examples could benefit from LiDAR or hyperspectral imaging tests in order to help uncover their secrets. Even at Pumapunku, which is a site we'll get into in this second video, there are many examples of tiny little drill holes pushed into the andesite. These may not have been core drill holes, but they're remarkable in their precision and in their almost delicate placing nonetheless. At the other end of the scale, some of these tube drill diameters seem almost impossibly large, certainly way too large to even consider doing it by hand. Something like this incredible coffer that's housed in the Egyptian Museum with 4 just massive tube drill holes drilled into it. These tube drills have also been used to make some very complex objects, like this one, which is a tube drill hole that's been drilled into a core from a larger tube drill, which is also housed in a museum. This block that's being shown by Yusuf Ayawan was, at least last time we saw it, located at Giza. It's another example of a hole drilled into a larger piece that may actually be something from another tube drill. But sadly, this block is now missing. It's no longer at Giza, at least we couldn't find it. And this is an all too common occurrence for evidence that doesn't really fit the mainstream narrative. Using manpower alone and manual hand tools like pounding stones or copper saws and chisels, it takes literally days of effort to grind away a very small amount of material in the very hard stone types like granite or diorite. Why then do we find clear evidence for overcuts in so many objects and slabs? We find these overcuts on the precision statues of ancient Egypt. You can find these overcuts under the arms or at the edge of the seat. You also tend to see tube drill holes drilled between the feet. There are other machining marks that seem to indicate some form of powerful industrial process was used to shape and finish the stone. One of the best examples is this remarkable slab tucked away in a corner at Abu Sir that has many such markings on it. Blades or saws have dipped into the material and then backed out, and cuts have been adjusted. I can only describe this block as having been machined. It's very flat, its corners and angles are very precise, and there are power tool markings all over it that seem almost delicate in their application. Even the end of this slab appears to have been cut through, and then you can see where the stone was broken away. And just look at the flatness of the surfaces and the sharpness of the angles. I really hope this slab is left where it is. It seems small enough that it could be relatively easily carried away, and I'm looking forward to examining it one more time when we visit Abu Sir again later this year. There's one other dimension to machining that I want to cover, and it's something that I've talked about before. That is the polishing or the finishing of precision-made stone objects. Once again, we're talking primarily about the boxes and the statues. In many cases, the stone has been worked to a point of reflecting light, which is not a natural characteristic for granodiorite or other hard stones. It needs to be worked extensively to get it to this point. There appears to be several stages of finishing that's required in order to get to this mirror-like finish, and this process is best illustrated by the mighty single-piece boxes that are housed in the underground catacombs of the Serapeum of Saqqara. While most of these giant 24 boxes have been finished to a almost mirror polish, there are several that show various stages of polishing, which makes the whole complex all the more remarkable because it indicates that this finishing work was likely done in situ, underground, and in very tight quarters. This giant black granite box, one of the biggest boxes in the complex, complete with its massive lid, it's tucked away in a corner that's generally off limits to the public, and it has been precisely made but not quite finished, perhaps because it developed a large crack in the end here. This box shows the rough machining stage of work, which was then followed by a much finer process that then flattened the surface but didn't actually polish it.
The lid almost reached a very like a final stage of smoothing.
Yeah.
So all you needed after this level is to smooth it and then
Again, look at that.
This nearly polished stage of finishing can also be seen on the undersides of the lids of the other boxes or on other surfaces of the boxes that were never meant to be fully polished. And a careful examination reveals some very fine lines or some markings from some form of tool that must have been used at this stage.
here also we have other machining, probably the latest layer. We saw how the rough machining reached a certain point. We have more machining here. Look at it here. Fine lines. If you can bring it with your camera. You see there are fine lines.
Yeah.
You see it?
Yes.
That looks like the final process or the final stage of smoothing before they give it the shiny polish. So the shiny, and you see it here.
That vitrification almost, right? Is that you've heard that term? They say a lot of the same thing about the stones in Peru. They get transformed. It's a vitrified. You can see there's almost like a layer of granite on top that's polished, like it's this layer.
Then, lastly, we have the actual polishing stage that brings the material to the point of reflecting light. Even while covered in dust, the perfect nature of the finish on these boxes really is remarkable, particularly in some of the interior spaces in the boxes, which appear to have been polished almost perfectly. If you've seen my Serapeum series, you'll know that there is some astonishing evidence that a liquid may have been used to achieve this finish. You can see the markings left by what appear to be liquid drops on the underside of the lid here.
A liquid. Some kind of liquid. So the liquid leaks down here and then forms these lines with drops.
Now, this isn't a varnish or a polish, at least as not as we know them, and many people have suggested this to me. That's not what this is, because these liquid pooling marks that are shown here, they are noticeably smoother than the surrounding material. This is not a process nor a chemical that we know of. Our granite blocks and the slabs that we use are polished with mechanical devices and varying levels of grit before they're shipped to your house and installed as a kitchen counter. Now, the orthodox explanation for this polishing is, of course, cast in the light of the primitive capabilities of the ancient Egyptians. Academics claim that this polishing was done simply by rubbing sand and rocks onto the surface. While this seems fairly ridiculous, this might actually be a plausible technique for polishing a flat surface, never mind how you got the surface flat in the first place. But even if it took years to achieve, it just isn't realistic when you consider the vast array of non-flat surfaces. There are many complex, irregular surfaces that are on these objects that have been polished just as well as the flat parts. It's not just the boxes that are polished. We also see a very fine degree of finishing in evidence on many statues. Plenty of these are housed today in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and many of them are made from types of stone that are even harder than granite. Note how every surface is polished, and in some cases the reflection of light is used to emphasize features like the rib cage on this statue or the chest of this seated figure. The inside of the fingernails are polished, the artistic lotus flower motif on the side of the throne here is polished, and this polished finish, which when shown next to the writing, shows us one of the hugely obvious contradiction when it comes to the varying level of technologies that we observe in ancient Egypt. The technology reflected in the writing on this statue does not remotely reflect the technology that was used to make the statue itself. It doesn't even come close. This is one of those things that once you see it, you can't easily unsee it because you start to notice it everywhere. The glyphs carved into these objects display the signature and the marks that handheld chisels leave when used on stone in a manner like this. Compared to the object itself, the writing is generally always pretty rough work. The builders obviously had the ability to polish any surface at any angle, as I've just shown, yet the writings are never polished, even in large symbols with plenty of space. Look at this box, for example. Although it's heavily weathered, you can still see the light that reflects from its surface, yet despite it being utterly covered in hieroglyphs, you can see the obvious hand tool nature of the work and how the writings were made by chipping away at the polished stone. Look at the writing on this box in the Serapeum. We've looked at it before, but I like to make the point that if the builders could make perfectly straight lines in the object itself, they could make perfectly square corners like those seen on the interior. Why then couldn't they manage to draw a straight line on the outside of the box? The simplest answer is because the writing most likely came later and was done by a civilization that lacked the same capability to work the stone.
Why we cannot accept it? Because of the perfection of machine. You cannot be the one who do this, the thing that would challenge the engineers today, and then you will be challenged just by adding the writings on. Especially that we have seen many good examples of dynastic Egyptians relief and deep relief and high relief superior writings, and we know the process of it and we know the tools. And in my opinion, as a stone carver and someone who's been studying this, I haven't seen really any writings in the hieroglyphics, even the best quality ones which I love so much, relief or high relief or deep relief, that reflects power to
How sick that place is, man. I need to go to the Serapeum.
but I haven't seen it yet in any writings. I know how it was done. It was done manually.
This is my friend Yusuf Ayawan. He's a master stonemason, a chematologist, and the son of the legendary indigenous wisdom keeper Hakim El Ayawan. And he's been studying these objects and ancient Egypt his entire life. He understands in a way that few do what it really takes to work in and carve stone, both by hand and with power tools, and he really knows what he's talking about.
The aesthetics
I
were
greatly
aesthetic.
respect his perspective and
Come
his
on, bro.
knowledge, and I agree with him when it comes to the technology level that we see in the writing. There's some nuance here to explain. The dynastic Egyptian civilization lasted a very long time, many thousands of years. They eventually developed iron tools, and although this was long after the Old Kingdom, they certainly developed the ability to do very fine work into hard stone. I'd imagine that being a scribe or a stone carver and writing hieroglyphs was a lifelong trade, and would have taken decades of training to become truly proficient. This proficiency in writing extended even to erasing old glyphs and replacing them. This process is well demonstrated by an example here at Tanis on this obelisk fragment. See how the bird glyph is being blended into the writing? I think that this is why Ramses II seems to have had his name on everything. Once he tagged it, it was his forever, and we still attribute endless statues and monuments to him, while I think the truth is more likely that he was just the last guy to write his name on something that was vastly more ancient. Undoubtedly, some of the carving that's been done into obelisks and statues is really excellent work. It looks very sharp and well defined. particularly on obelisks like this example at Karnak Temple. However, as Yusuf said, even with these examples, he knows how it was done, and it was done with hand tools. He's lived and travelled in Egypt his whole life, and he's never seen any writing that reflects machining or the use of power tools. We do, however, see this evidence on the objects themselves, on the boxes, on the slabs, on the columns, the obelisks, and on the statues. The writing is, without fail, always used to date the sites and to date the objects that are found on the sites, despite in many cases there being a huge disparity in technology levels. How could anyone say that these poorly made scratches into this incredible box at the Serapeum were made by the same people that made the box itself? Yet this is exactly how we date and relate this site and its objects. At the Serapeum, this box is considered to be the most valuable because it has writing on it. I would prefer to call this what it is, a priceless, high-technology, ancient object that was inherited and then vandalized with a chisel by a later and far less capable ancient culture. Maybe it's high time that we opened our eyes and used some of our own high-technology capability in order to reevaluate these ancient places, so that we might get just a few steps closer to the truth. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 of this series will be the very next video that I produce, and in it we'll continue this investigation by taking a look at some of the logistics and construction methodologies around moving some of the really big, heavy stuff. We'll also take a look at what I think is the most convincing aspect of ancient high precision,
what's up?
ancient high technology.
What's up,
which
beastly
is precision.
salamander?
We're going to get into all of the little vases, the
Nice name.
symmetry
What's
in the
up? What's
stone
up?
vases, the columns, the boxes, the obelisks, the various aspects of precision that are both measurable and quite evident. In that video, I'll also give you my opinion on what it is that I think we're really looking at here when we look at all of this high technology and
Just chilling,
precision
that's cool.
objects that are mixed up in kind of the rougher and less precise work from other ancient civilizations. I do want to take a minute to just say a huge thank you to everybody that does support the channel via the value for value model. It means a lot to me. It's the only reason that I'm able to take the time to make and edit these videos. Whether you're doing that through Patreon, PayPal, subscribe, there's a bunch of ways you can do it.
Yeah, we got AI bots.
Support. I also wanted to say a big thank you to
So
Steph
the list of names is there, right?
for designing the new logo.
That's
I
the
really,
list of
really
names.
dig it.
We got
I've put it
Donald
on a bunch
Trump,
of
The
new
Rock,
merchandise. I'm
Alex
using it in the
Jones.
videos, as you can
We got
tell.
Simply
And,
Wit,
yeah,
Ninja
that's great.
Lifestyle,
I'm not that
Mel
talented
Brooks.
in an artistic direction, so it was great.
There was
to
some
put
are
it there.
controversial,
Otherwise,
man.
I hope you
Cartman,
enjoyed it,
dude,
and
I
I
had
will
to
see
down
you guys
Cartman.
in the
Cartman
next
went
one.
full racist. I had to shut him down. There's no more Cartman. Racism is not funny, but... So yeah, that's the list. And if you put a tilde... Let me show you. So Robin Williams isn't in the list, but if you put a tilde... Check what happens. Oh, you got it. Nice. Let's see. Look at this. Riddler. Look at that. Who's afraid of a big old bat? Certainly not I. My places unmatched. Riddle me anything. With ease.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and this is part 2 of my series looking at the evidence for forms of ancient high technology.
Nice.
Part 1 is worth a watch before this if you haven't seen it already. In that video, we set up some of the context around these claims for ancient high technology.
I'm funny.
How
Yeah,
they
thanks.
correlate to the
Appreciate
story
that.
of history as we know it. And then we dived into the evidence for ancient machining and polishing.
Sometimes it doesn't work though.
In this video, we're going to look at another category of evidence for ancient high technology, the one that I think is the most convincing, that of precision. The nature of precision bears some explanation, as while it's a word we all know and hear pretty frequently, it certainly gets used constantly as a marketing term, precision this or precision that. It's a concept with some really far-reaching consequences. Our entire modern world is built on precision. we are constantly surrounded by its application, from the engines in our cars and the aircraft that we fly in, to the electronics that are omnipresent in every single device that we use, watch, or interact with. Without it, modern civilization simply wouldn't exist. Our way of life is the direct result of the relentless pursuit of precision. These days, we take the benefits of precision for granted. For example, the mass-produced and pervasive semiconductor microchips that are in all of our devices, from dishwashers to phones and computers. These all contain millions of transistors that are packaged in tiny, power-efficient silicon footprints. These tiny transistors are assembled in a process that's measured on the nanometer scale, which is to say measured in the billionths of meters. And yes, that's billion with a B. The width of a helium atom is measurable on this scale, coming in at around 0.06 of 1 nanometer. I recently read a book called The Perfectionists: How Precision Engineers Created the Modern World, written by Simon Winchester. It was recommended to me by Philip Adams in a brief email discussing the precision of the Serapeum. In this book, Winchester describes the rise of the modern pursuit of precision, beginning with its origins in the 18th century in England with the birth of accurate chronometers and developments in cannon manufacturing for the Navy, and also in the progression of the steam piston engine. All of a sudden, it started to become very important to be able to manufacture precision surfaces with low tolerances, like pistons and cylinders, such that pressurized steam didn't just leak out and could be made to do actual work. It also turns out that when the barrels of cannons are accurately bored out and rifled, which requires both the solid cast cannon and the tool that's boring it out to be held rigidly in place, they are far less prone to exploding randomly and far more likely to shoot straight. Before this development, naval cannons were made by casting the molten iron into its rough shape, including the hollow space for the barrel, and then they would fire the cannon while it was still cooling and pretty much just hope for the best. It was in small but significant leaps like this that modern precision manufacturing was born. From this point on, precision drove the Industrial Revolution, and its applications seemed endless. Modern engines are much more powerful and compact today, thanks to the precise flatness of cylinder heads and the low tolerances of pistons, rings, and balls, as well as the mechanical precision of all of their other parts. We enjoy the godlike ability to travel halfway around the world in a matter of hours by zipping through the stratosphere at nearly the speed of sound, even though we often complain bitterly about it, all thanks to precision. Mankind has the ability to send humans into space without instant death, and to even bring them back again, all thanks to precision. Modern firearms rely on precision-made parts and ammunition, as before we developed this capability, gun parts were handmade and had to be hand-filed to fit individual weapons. Before this, misfires, jams, or malfunctions were very common, although on the positive side, I suppose wars were probably a lot harder to fight back then. Ultimately, the application of precision in warfare led to the development of nuclear weapons, and now us talking monkeys have the ability to uncork Armageddon without the assistance of any space rocks or burps from the sun, so I guess it's not all good news. Clocks, watches, and other mechanical devices got smaller and more accurate, and eventually the microelectronic and semiconductor industries were born. Our civilization progressed from measuring precision in units of tenths of inches in the 1700s, right down to the nanotechnology of today that can be measured by the diameter of individual atoms. Why did we do this? Why did we go to all of the trouble, expense, and effort to develop and keep pushing back the boundaries of precision? This question may seem obvious, but it reveals one of the fundamental aspects of precision, and that is its relationship to function. We develop these expensive capabilities because they gain us notable functional benefits in their application. Inventing the capability to create hard surfaces that are perfectly flat to within 1/20th the width of a human hair is a difficult and expensive thing to do. Developing the capability to even measure such precision is equally expensive, if not more so. It requires calibration, and none of it comes naturally to us. You can't see this level of precision with your eye, you can't feel it with your hand, You need sophisticated, calibrated, and expensive metrology instruments in order to do so. We simply don't create precision manufacturing capability to this level for any other reason than function. We don't develop it for ceremonial purposes, nor do we develop it for artistic reasons. However, once we have this type of precision manufacturing capability, it can be applied to all sorts of end products. Just consider a couple of examples from the modern age. Take the reductive process, like 3D CNC milling machines, or an additive process, like 3D printing. Whether we are making artwork or machine parts, it's the process itself that provides the precision. The process was developed in the first place so that we could gain the functional benefits of that precision, but then we can apply it to pretty much anything we want to do with the process. And this is an important point to remember when we're looking at the precision that's evident in some ancient objects, as some of these precision ancient objects appear more functional than others. So keep this point in mind as we go through the examples. Overall, I enjoyed Simon Winchester's book, as it certainly makes the case for precision forming the backbone of the modern world. One thing that I mildly disagreed with was the notion that the concept and practice of precision only began in the 18th century. I think it would be more accurate to say instead that the practice was restarted in the 18th century, or that the concept was only rediscovered at that time by modern man, as it seems clear that at some point, ancient man had a pretty damn good grip on the concept and application of precision as well. Although this isn't something that you will often see or hear discussed by orthodox archaeologists, there is tremendous evidence for very high degrees of precision in many of the vastly ancient stone objects and architecture all around the world. Some of these objects display a level of precision that simply could not have been accidental, and by its very nature required sophisticated tools and highly advanced knowledge and capability in order to achieve. Although we find neither sophisticated tools in the archaeological record, nor any records of advanced capability in what we know of ancient civilizations, the proof that both existed at some point in the past is incontrovertible. The results of sophisticated tools and the results of these processes are still sitting right in front of our eyes in the megalithic objects and architecture that puzzle and captivate so many people from all around the world. Perhaps the best example of measured ancient precision is found in a place that I've talked about extensively on this channel, the Serapeum of Saqqara. In terms of smoking gun evidence for ancient high technology, this underground labyrinth and its 24 huge megalithic boxes is really at the top of the list. The precision of these mighty single-piece boxes and their lids, some of which weigh up to 100 tons, is measured in straight lines, in flat surfaces, and in the perfect squareness of corners and relative faces. These are easily understood dimensions of precision, and it's a good place to start our investigation, as we'll move on to the more complex evidence of compound curved surfaces and three-dimensional proportions of objects like the tiny stone jars and the giant granite statues afterwards. I have a 5-part series of videos dedicated to the Serapeum that's on my channel, so I'll be brief here, but if you haven't seen them, please do check out the Serapeum playlist. The link is below in the description. Using a calibrated and expensive precision straight edge, manufacturing engineer Chris Dunn has measured the inside surfaces of a couple of these boxes to be precisely and absolutely flat, to within 1/20th the width of a human hair, or 0.0001 inches, which is the limit of his straight edge. Wherever he moved the straight edge over the flat, mirror-like interior walls of the box, light did not pass underneath it, which it would have if the surface was not perfectly flat. Using a precision square, calibrated to within 5/100,000ths of an inch, or 0.00005 inches, he found the inside faces of the boxes to not only be perfectly square and parallel to each other, but also perfectly square relative to the lid. This is a profound achievement. Remember that this all has been done in massive single-piece granite boxes. These aren't separate pieces of granite that are then bolted together, which is how we might construct something like this today. And one single mistake anywhere would mean that you need to change the entire geometry of the box. The complexity and difficulty of getting this feat perfectly correct, particularly in faces up to 10 feet apart, really can't be overstated. Now, not only was this done perfectly for one box, it appears to be a feat repeated time and time again across many of these boxes. Quoting Christopher Dunn from his article The Amazing Boxes of the Serapeum, which you can find on his website at gizapower.com, quote, "Think of it as a geometric reality. In order for the lid to be square with the two inside walls, the inside walls would have to be parallel to one another along the vertical axis. Moreover, the top side of the box would need to establish a plane that is square to the sides. That makes finishing the inside exponentially more difficult. The manufacturers of these boxes in the Serapeum not only created inside surfaces that were flat when measured vertically and horizontally, they also made sure that the surfaces they were creating were square and parallel to each other, with one surface, the top, having sides that are 5 feet and 10 feet apart from each other. But without such parallelism and squareness of the top surface, the squareness noted on both sides would not exist. While it may be argued that modern man cannot impose a modern perspective on artifacts that are thousands of years old, an appreciation of the level of precision found in these artifacts is lacking in archaeological literature and is only revealed by an understanding of what it takes to produce this kind of work. As an engineer and craftsman who has worked in manufacturing for over 40 years and who has created precision artifacts in our modern world, in my opinion, this accomplishment in prehistory deserves more recognition. Nobody does this kind of work unless there is a very high purpose for the artifact. Even the concept of this type of precision does not occur to an artisan unless there is no other means of accomplishing what the artifact is intended to do. The only other reason that such precision would be created in an object would be that the tools that are used to create it are so precise that they are incapable of producing anything less than precision. With either scenario, we are looking at a higher civilization in prehistory than what is currently accepted. To me, the implications are staggering. This is why I believe that these artifacts that I have measured in Egypt are the smoking gun that proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that a higher civilization than what we have been taught existed in ancient Egypt. The evidence is cut into the stone." End quote. The Serapeum isn't the only place that one can find precision stone boxes. They're found in many pyramids and in so-called temples, as well as in other underground galleries and tunnel systems like those in the Valley of the Kings. The Egyptian Museum also has many examples of precision boxes that have been recovered from all over Egypt. The best and biggest of these boxes, however, are still down here in the Serapeum, probably because they're basically impossible to move around down here in these confined spaces, the logistics of which is a topic we'll get into later in this series, as it's also a pretty clear form of evidence for ancient high technology. The Serapeum boxes are also, at least to my knowledge, the only boxes that have been measured and tested, at least to some degree, for aspects of high precision. That analysis was done by Christopher Dunn on his own initiative, and even then was only performed on a couple of the boxes in the Serapeum and not on all of them. While many of the other precision boxes seem to have very similar characteristics to those in the Serapeum, I can't find any evidence that they've ever been tested this way, even by the relatively rudimentary testing that you can do with handheld precision straight edges, squares, and corner radius dies. I think this fact speaks volumes about the motives of the academics and the institutions that control the access to and the research funding for sites and artifacts like these. They just don't seem to be that interested, yet there are and have been for years now several non-invasive techniques and tests that could easily be deployed in order to learn much more about the true nature of ancient precision that we can see in these objects. Handheld precision tools would be a start, but more modern, laser-based metrology tools could be used to determine the dimensions and tolerances over the entire surface of these artifacts. High-definition LiDAR-based 3D scanning, or the emerging field of hyperspectral imaging, could be used to dramatically advance our understanding of the exact nature of precision and the construction methods that we use to manufacture boxes like these. Not only boxes, but these techniques could and should be used to model and study many of the precision objects and architecture that are found around the world. It's worth noting that when you look at the various boxes in Egypt, there is also strong evidence for multiple levels of technological capability. Although they're always uniformly labelled as sarcophagi, whether it's for people or for bulls, there always seems to be two types of boxes. There are the precision-made ones with straight lines, sharp corners, flat and polished surfaces, and then there are the clearly handmade boxes, which are imperfectly done and still display chisel and hammer dressing marks. Although this isn't always the case, in general, the poor quality boxes tend to come from the later periods, with the precision boxes being attributed to the older and earlier periods. Even the oldest box known, an 8-ton single piece of granite that is under Mastaba 17 at Maidum, appears to be a precision-made box, and it's not something that's been roughly carved by hand. We have here examples of the same backwards progression of technological capability, the same contradiction in the story of history that is demonstrated in general by the Old Kingdom of Egypt when it's held up relative to the rest of the Egyptian civilization. If we can't explain how the dynastic Egyptians made these boxes with what we know of their primitive capabilities or with the tools that we have in the archaeological record, does it not make more sense that they might have inherited these objects? They might have used them for ceremony and imitated them. They might have tried to create their own boxes, ones that are explainable by their tools and are explainable with their known capabilities. Here at the site of Tanis, you have the two types of boxes actually lined up side by side. One is clearly precision made and the other is obviously not. They reflect vastly different levels of capability and technology, and only one of these matches what we know about the tools and techniques of the dynastic Egyptians. Before I move on, I do want to take a minute to acknowledge and thank Christopher Dunn for his contribution to the world in this field. His book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, is, in my opinion, incredibly important work, and I think that it will be widely recognized as such in years to come. So we've established that while precision seems to have existed deep in the past, it's only something that our civilization has recently developed and then put to significant use over the last 200 to 300 years. The fact is that it wasn't until after we had begun our own modern voyage down the path of precision that we even had the capability to notice and accurately measure ancient forms of precision, or to even appreciate the sophistication of the manufacturing techniques that were required to achieve it. This evidence has been sitting in front of humanity for thousands of years, like some sort of coded message sent down through time, but it's one that we've only relatively recently developed the capability to read. Sir William Flinders Petrie was one of the very first to apply our civilization's knowledge of precision and manufacturing to the objects of ancient Egypt, and he did so to various degrees across his work through the late 1800s and early 1900s. He observed and quantified the drilling and machining marks that are left in artifacts, and he measured and speculated on the techniques required to manufacture the many ancient stone vases and vessels that come from the oldest times of ancient Egypt. These stone jars, bowls, or other objects are truly remarkable pieces that, by their very nature, provide proof that advanced manufacturing techniques and precision were alive and well deep in the distant past. Found in the tens of thousands, these vases and objects are today mostly associated with the very earliest periods of ancient Egypt, even the first and second dynasties, as well as the archaic and pre-dynastic periods, which is a huge clue right there, as these periods are quite literally considered part of the Stone Age. The range of shapes and materials used in the manufacture of these jars and vases is both wide and varied. Some are tiny, almost as if their makers were teasing us with their capability, and some are quite large, but they all seem to display a frankly astonishing degree of symmetry and precision. This jar is one of my favorites, and it seems to have been so precisely made and so well balanced that it can stand upright on its tiny base, almost like an egg standing up on its tip. Many jars seem to be made this way, And while I've not had the privilege of handling them directly in order to test this, I'd like to see anyone try and make these by hand with copper chisels and the known techniques of ancient Egypt. All I can say is good luck. While some vases or jars seem very solid, others are almost ridiculously thin to the point of transparency, like these examples. In some cases, like this vase that has suffered some damage, we can get an idea of just how thin this material is. Shaping and carving out the inside angles and the inside cavities of these jars, some through very long and narrow necks, and then keeping the material thickness consistent and accurate is an extraordinarily difficult challenge when working in very hard stone. Quoting Flinders Petrie from his article in the 1884 Journal of the Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland, quote, "The finest examples of turning in hard stone are in the British Museum. A small, highly polished, narrow-necked vase in diorite, or rather in transparent quartz, with veins of hornblende, has its neck only 0.05 inches thick. A large vase of syenite is turned, inside and out, remarkably thin, considering the size of the component crystals. But the greatest triumph is a bowl of diorite, number 4716, translucent and full of minute flaws, which must render it very brittle. Yet this bowl, 6 inches diameter, is only 1/40th of an inch, or 0.024 inches thick, over its greatest part. Just around the edge it is thicker in order to strengthen it, but a small chip broken out of the body of it shows its extraordinary thinness, no stouter than thin card. An alabaster vase of Wanis of the 5th dynasty almost rivals this in thinness, being only 1/20th to 1/30th of an inch thick." End quote. Working in these brittle and very hard materials, particularly to these tolerances, is a remarkable feat of manufacturing. From granite to diorite to schist, breccia, flint, conglomerate, quartz, basalt, and even obsidian, these small objects are typically made from some of the hardest and most difficult to work materials you can find. There is one vase that I know of that is made from corundum, and yes, this is corundum. There are several forms of it. It doesn't all look like gemstones, and corundum is a 9 on the Mohs scale of hardness. It's the hardest substance on Earth next to diamond. Supposedly these were all made by hand, with basic hand tools, flint or copper chisels.
Not just the rock crystal vessel and obsidian. Imagine, we don't have obsidian here in Egypt. It had to be made from Pharaoh. But imagine these types of vessels side by side with this kind of thing. So, it's great.
Analysis of the stone itself reveals further challenges. Many stone types have vastly varying degrees of hardness in the material itself, being made up of conglomerate mixes of different individual chunks of various materials and crystals. As the piece is being worked, cutting edges would move from relatively soft material into very hard and brittle crystals that would typically shatter rather than cut cleanly when worked. Yet many of these vases are both mind-bendingly thin as well as being finished and polished to a very high level. The technology involved in making these jars is so far beyond clay pottery or ceramics that it's laughable to house them together and say, look, these all came from the same place, so they must have been made by the same people. Some of these jars were undoubtedly used as canopic vessels as part of ritual mummification. Why then were they sealed with rough mud and clay lids? These clay lids are still housed and displayed in the museum, right next to the incredible stone jars. Yet how can you say that these are equivalent technologies that came from the same people for a singular purpose? Once again, I think this is strong evidence for inheritance in ancient Egypt. If these jars were truly made to be canopic vessels by the dynastic Egyptians, surely they could have afforded to manufacture stone lids for them, but that's just not the case. Some 40,000 of these vases and jars were found beneath the very first pyramid, the step pyramid of Djoser, the first pharaoh of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. Other objects date back even further, even to so-called pre-dynastic times, like this just beautiful hollow tube of lapis lazuli with a gold sheath, It's housed in the pre-dynastic section in the museum next to bone needles, beads, and basic pottery. Make no mistake, this is a precision object. It's made from a very hard and brittle material that required an advanced capability to create, and that's just the stone part. Even the presence of gold means mining, smelting, and refining. It's an out-of-place object, and it really has no business being housed next to the known products of Neolithic, pre-Bronze Age, hunter-gatherer cultures, and it's just one of the many hidden in plain sight clues to the truth of our history that you can find in the Egyptian Museum. Take a look at this huge granite jar. It's attributed to the Archaic Age. This is very much like the Serapeum boxes. We have here evidence for some very poor and badly aligned early forms of writing that barely scratch the surface of what is essentially a precision object that's made from very hard stone. From observing the markings of tube drills, which I've covered in detail in other videos, Flinders Petrie deduced that the ancients were familiar with rotating tools. But from analysing the vases and bowls, he realised that they were also familiar with turning the work itself. He concluded that they must have used something that's similar to a lathe, with features like mechanical tool rests, in order to manufacture these objects. Quoting Petrie from his book, The Pyramids and Temples of Giza, quote, "The principle of rotating the tool was, for smaller objects, abandoned in favour of rotating the work, and the lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in modern workshops. The diorite bowls and vases of the Old Kingdom are frequently met with and show great technical skill. One piece found at Giza, number 14, shows that the method employed was true turning and not any process of grinding, since the bowl has been knocked off of its centering, recentered imperfectly, and the old turning not quite turned out. Thus there are two surfaces belonging to different centerings and meeting in a cusp. Such an appearance could not be produced by any grinding or rubbing process which pressed on the surface." End quote. And here is a further quote from Petrie, this time in his article in the 1884 Anthropological Journal. Quote, "For the use of a hook tool in turning the insides of vases, a very rigid rest or even a mechanical tool holder is almost necessary, but one specimen here shows that the early Egyptians were already familiar not only with lathes and jeweled turning tools, but with mechanical tool rests and sweeping regular arcs in cutting. The diorite bowl, of which this piece is a fragment, has been turned as a segment of a sphere inside by a tool working from a fixed center in the axis of the lathe, with a radius of 3.94 inches.
Man, that's funny.
Having cut this spherical curve, the center of play of the tool was shifted about 0.5 inches higher and 0.7 inch out of the lathe axis, and a fresh arc was struck from the center of the bowl, thereby cutting out a fresh curve which left a raised lip around the edge." End quote. Despite this evidence, and despite the other clear evidence for large circular saws and tube drills, remember that according to mainstream academics today, the Old Kingdom Egyptians did not have access to the wheel or its principles, of which lathes are an advanced technique and still something in vastly widespread use today in workshops and manufacturing all over the place. They say this because there's no evidence for the wheel in their writings or in their diagrams, and according to most academics, they didn't have command of the wheel until the Second Intermediate Period, thousands of years after the Old Kingdom, around the time when the Hyksos invaders showed up with their wheeled chariots. Just as an aside, can you imagine the Egyptians when they saw the wheeled chariots of the Hyksos and then they looked over at their old sleds? No analysis of the objects in the museum would be complete without a mention of the notorious schist disc. This is a very complex artifact, labelled naturally as a jar or a vase, that was found amongst primitive flint knives and copper tools in the mastaba of Prince Sabu, a royal from the very first dynasty of the Old Kingdom. It was broken and then reassembled. It's been carved from a single piece of very hard schist stone and then carefully put back together by the museum staff. Many people have said many things about the schist disc, and there is lots of speculation as to its purpose. Was it part of a machine? Was it a tool? Or was it just artistic expression and a nice place to put a bunch of flowers? I'm less interested in the speculation about its purpose than I am with the technology that's required to make this piece. Although it's been reassembled and it looks a little wonky, this does not seem to be the result of lathe work, but rather these complex curved surfaces have been precisely carved into very hard stone and then repeated accurately for each of its wings in these sweeping motions that the stone makes. It's a masterpiece of stonework, yet supposedly this was created in the very first dynasty of ancient Egypt as nothing more than ceremonial artwork. Now, it's not only the small stone jars that show evidence of advanced manufacturing that used the principles of the wheel and then produced precision results. It is also shown in some of the largest objects known from ancient Egypt. So buckle up, because this is where it gets really interesting, as these massive objects take the evidence for advanced technology in vastly ancient times to a whole new level. I'm talking about the giant columns and the giant statues that are found across many sites, both up and down the length of ancient Egypt. In terms of pure symmetry and a demonstrated mastery of working in hard stone, the huge single-piece flared columns are really hard to beat. My favourite example is a remnant from this column, shaped from pink granite, found at the Old Kingdom site of the Temple of Bastet. It's hard to describe the stonework here as anything less than pure mastery. Consider that the original quarried block of stone must have been wider than the widest part of the flared end on the column, and then worked down to the width of the column body on a perfectly aligned centre line, then shaped and finished with accuracy and symmetry. Although this one has been broken, it would have likely been more than 40 or 50 feet tall, over 15 meters. We know that some columns were truly giant, like this one that's still standing at Alexandria, which is well in excess of that figure. The flares, angles, ridges, and curves on this piece all appear flawless. They are made entirely smooth and well polished, and the entire massive body seems to be utterly symmetrical and balanced. Was this made by hand, do you think, with pounding stones and copper chisels? I just can't imagine how. To my mind, this must be the result of some very advanced tools, along with significant mechanical assistance and guidance. Once again, I think objects like this column would be a very easy target for a non-destructive analysis using modern metrology techniques and high-resolution 3D scanning. It wouldn't even be that expensive to do. The hard part would be gaining permissions for the test. It's a good thing granite is such a durable substance, I suppose, as I can only hope this analysis does happen at some point in the future, and I'm reasonably confident that this fragment of truth will still be here waiting for it when it does. One of these columns alone is really a masterpiece, but there is another dimension to their precision entirely, and that is that there are far more than just one of them. Here at the Old Kingdom site of Tanis, you can see the same shaped column ends that we saw at Bastet, although they're more heavily eroded by time and weather. Some huge single pieces of multiple columns still remain here today for tourists to puzzle over. These seem to have been stamped out in ancient times as if they were made in some sort of giant factory. Dozens of these huge single-piece granite columns are known to exist, or have existed, and the ones from the same installation are all typically identical, and they all feature flared ends in palm or lotus shapes. They've all been found on the oldest of Egyptian sites, places like Bastet, Tanis, Saqqara, and Giza.
The results of like 16 pillars, all the same measurements, no extension.
Oh, it's nice to max out.
This reflects
Yeah, it's nice
that
to max out on flies. That's
carving these
nice.
stones, they have a total power. They have control. They want to accomplish something, they accomplish it. All the same measurement. You know how challenging is this? Pillars that's over 5.5 meters. Where do you find 16 pillars? Like, 16 pieces that you can make 16 pillars out of. The crown is a single solid piece with the pillar. not like the Roman pillars.
Stacked
Made,
up.
yeah. The pillars in the pyramid structures are single solid piece. That palm-shaped pillar is very, very challenging. Of course, the piece itself was as big as the width of the crown, of the palm, of the crown, of the pillar. And then the base of it is wide. And then it keeps going narrower like this. And then the pillar is crowned at the top. Very, very, very challenging. You can find it in the sites that's dated or related to the 5th dynasty especially. And that's of course according to the writing, even that we saw pillars from Winnie's structure, that pyramid in Saqqara, from that open court of it, and still has crude writings on the pillars. But that's how they were dated and related. The writings look so crude, doesn't fit with somebody who have the capability of creating a three-dimensional piece of art colossal. And then he will do the writings this cool. Don't tell me that they run out of time or something like that, or tools.
Tanis itself must have been a mighty and awe-inspiring megalithic triumph in antiquity, a true playground of the giants. The remnants of some just massive statues can still be found here. You have to use your imagination to picture the scale of some of these works, so try to do just that, working from the size of just this one big toe, which is carved from granite. This statue would have been a single piece, likely of a figure either seated or perhaps even standing. In terms of sheer mass, these types of statues far exceed the boxes in the Serapeum. In terms of precision, analysis shows that they bury the theory that they were made by a Bronze Age culture using nothing but pounding stones and hand tools right into the ground. At the temples of Luxor and Karnak in Upper Egypt, we find the best known examples of these giant precision statues. Named after and labelled as Ramesses II, and these are named so because he carved his name onto them, they seem to loom eternally over the crowds of tourists that visit these sites every year. The largest of these statues at Luxor are estimated to weigh up to 400 tons, and there are several of them, all identical if somewhat damaged today. They also got much larger, and at least for the statues that aren't damaged, the faces are identical in proportions and in features. There are remnants of a Sinite Ramses statue at the Ramesseum, which is across the Nile from Luxor, that was over 60 feet tall and is estimated to have weighed more than 1,000 tons. The remnants from the statues at Tanis that I showed you before would have actually put their heights at over 90 feet tall, which is 30% larger than this statue at the Ramesseum again. It's no wonder that these statues, with their consistent expression, seem to be subtly smiling, as if daring anyone to try and replicate them, anyone to dare to try to uncover their secrets. These statues, with their enigmatic expressions, were the inspiration for Shelley's Ozymandias sonnet, Ozymandias being the Greek name for Ramesses II. And when pondering these mighty works, you can begin to understand the iconic phrase from that sonnet. Quote, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." End quote. For the best technological analysis of the precision manufacturing techniques that must have been used to shape these behemoths, once again we turn to the work of Christopher Dunn. By analysing a huge array of photographs that he captured during several visits to the statues, Dunn has shown that some incredibly complex geometric engineering and precision manufacturing was involved in creating these statues. Not only that, but this plan was executed to perfection again and again. We start this analysis with the hedgets and the peshents, which are the elongated crowns that sit on top of these statues representing Upper and Lower Egypt, and several of these crowns have been detached from these statues. Dunn shows how they are the result of an extremely complex series of compound radial curves and spherical geometry that's been made into 3 dimensions, and then these precise shapes were repeated from crown to crown. There are no flat surfaces here. This is something far more challenging. yet the smoothness and the consistency of the arcs in the shape are basically perfect, and they seem to be replicated exactly from one example to the next. To make these shapes, radial cuts need to be made in a fashion such that the radius stays consistent, but the center of the radius arm that's making the cut moves, and moves precisely in 3 dimensions. The crown appears perfectly symmetrical from side to side. If you take a photo lined up from the front, then reverse the image and lay it transparently down on the center line of the original image, the sides line up exactly as Dunn shows here using this technique. His analysis of the spherical, radial and elliptoid geometry required to make these crowns is very thorough, and it's something that I will get into in some depth in a dedicated video. But his conclusion as to what this infers in terms of the capability of the builders of these crowns is worth sharing. Quoting Chris Dunn from his book Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. Quote, "The design and precise geometry that was crafted into Ramses' crown is a symbol of a society that was disciplined in precision engineering and craft. The pieces could not have been created without the aid of some kind of mechanical device that guided the tool along a prescribed contour. Neither was this mechanical device a simple machine. Figures 1.29 and 1.30 illustrate a path of the center point of an arc extrapolated from the geometry of the crown. If the designers were to convey to the engineers or craftsmen what they wanted, drawings similar to figure 1.29 and 1.30 may have been used. The design is one thing, but devising from the drawing a means of cutting the design into granite with the exactitude noted in the photographs and transmitted through the palms of my hands to my brain as I felt each surface is entirely another matter. Creating such an object today using modern
It's not a
computers,
new one.
software,
I'm sorry, I'm
and
not moving
computer
back to Florida. I mean, I'd
numerical
love to.
control,
I
or
would.
CNC
I totally would.
machines
In a
would
heartbeat, but I
present
don't.
some significant challenges, to be sure, but not as much head scratching would be involved today as there would have been 49 years ago when I first entered the manufacturing trade as a young apprentice. Applying the tools of 50 years ago to the Ramses
Yeah, sorry, I didn't
would
mean to
severely
tease
tax
you and think
craftsmen's
I was moving
skill
there
in
again.
manufacturing, and the
Oh, man,
tools
hope you're
and
doing well,
instruments
buddy.
necessary to ensure such precise geometry would not even be in a sculptor's toolbox." End quote. This is a profound statement. A professional, expert, and well-credentialed manufacturing engineer is stating that we could likely not have created such objects even 50 years ago. Dunn's work on the technological characteristics of these statues should be the basis for much further analysis and study, but as far as I can tell, he's the only one who's really made the effort so far. The next time somebody scoffs at the idea of ancient high technology, who tells you that they think they know how this was done, that the ancients just applied time, patience, and chisels to the problem, ask them to replicate one of these crowns. It would be quite the challenge, even at 1/50th of the scale, to create something that exhibits the same precision, dimensions, and proportions of the original object. Ask them to do it in granite, by hand, using the tools found in the archaeological record, and I think we'd start to see some of the truth behind what we're really looking at here. This truth becomes only more astounding when a similar analysis is made to the faces of the Ramses statues. Here, once again, we see evidence for advanced three-dimensional geometric precision and remarkable symmetry made into huge granite objects that has been replicated over and over again. These statues, be those at Luxor, Karnak, or at the Ramesseum, appear to have all been cut and shaped to the same plan, to the same face, and then that work was carried out with an absolutely mechanical degree of precision. Chris Dunn has derived many different aspects of complex geometry in the construction of the faces, and he's shown that core sacred geometry and mathematical principles like the Fibonacci sequence, Pythagorean right-angled triangles, the golden ratio, and even the flower of life are reflected in the stone. Varying degrees of radial cuts were consistently made into the granite, and the axis of these cuts were blended to form compound surfaces that curve in 3 dimensions, making up the features of the face. These complex surfaces were precisely inversed and replicated from side to side. These faces are symmetrical, and the implications of this when applied to the manufacturing
Cougar?
techniques
What's
used
up,
to
Cougar?
make
How
them
are you? Welcome.
quite frankly staggering. This near-perfect symmetry is not a characteristic of human faces, nor is it one that we find in other statues from other cultures, and the precision of this symmetry makes this achievement exponentially more difficult to replicate. By doing the same experiment of reversing a photograph and overlaying it transparently onto the centerline of the original, we can see this symmetry in action. Centerline measurements back up this observation, and what is even more astonishing is that this was repeated time and again across multiple statues. Just look at the consistent profile ratio shown here between the eyes and the mouth across multiple statues. How could these have been made? The only way we can accurately and consistently create such complex surfaces today is with computer design and mechanical guidance in CNC machines that are basically milling machines that operate in 3 dimensions. How does this process work for something that is 40, 60, or 90 feet tall and weighs anywhere between 400 and 1,000 tons and is made from granite? Further quoting Chris Dunn from his book. Quote, "The contoured surfaces of Ramsey's symmetrical face would be familiar to designers of everyday products that are created routinely today with computer algorithms known as non-uniform rational B-splines or NURBS, which allow them to smoothly morph one shape to another with unbroken perfection. By using NURBS, computer-aided design programs create contours of airplane wings, turbine blades, and even the computer keyboard at your fingertips. Surfaces are now routinely designed and manufactured to the apparent precision of Ramsey's head. Incredibly, the ancient Egyptians were also able to routinely craft Ramsey's head and achieved the same results again and again from the north to the south of their linear Nile-based empire. The stunning implications are analogous to looking through the static interference pattern of time and confusion and seeing the elegance and precision that is normally built into a Lexus in a place where only the most rudimentary techniques of manufacturing are thought to have existed. The techniques that the ancient Egyptians are supposed to have used, those taught to us in school, would not produce the precision of a Model T Ford, let alone a Lexus or a Porsche." End quote. Chris Dunn has been working from extensive and well-aligned photographs of the faces, but I want to make the point again, how much do you think we could learn with a modern analysis using modern metrology tools and high-resolution 3D scanning? Some scanning of objects like these has actually been done, but it seems to have been done at quite a low resolution and done more for the purposes of artistic modeling rather than precise metrology. It's certainly a good start, however, and I'd have to think that taking this type of analysis to the next level should really not be particularly difficult for our archaeological institutions and their authority figures, if only they were actually more interested in it. I do want to make the point that these statues are not like other statues that come from later cultures. I think we can all agree that stylistically, ancient Egypt stands alone. These are precision objects as much as they are artwork, and in this characteristic they are distinct and separate from the classic and evocative beauty of more modern artwork, like that of the Renaissance period. They really aren't the same thing. I've heard many people suggest that because sculptors like Michelangelo could create artwork as incredible as the statue of David, then surely this is proof that artists can do anything. I've been to Florence and I've seen David. It's a profoundly beautiful achievement, but it's just not the same thing as the mechanical precision and symmetry reflected in the Ramsey statues. David is utterly and emotionally human in its lack of symmetry, whereas Ramsey appears to be so inhuman or perhaps beyond human because of its symmetry. And what's more, it's made out of granite. This substance is orders of magnitude more difficult to work in than marble, and modern sculptors understand this. Chris Dunn contacted contemporary sculptor Mike Leckie, whose beautiful touch in marble resulted in pieces like this one, called Bather in Marble. I'm quoting now from a letter from Mike Leckie sent to Chris Dunn on the subject of the Ramsey statues. Quote, "Dear Chris, thank you for this opportunity. I've been interested in Egypt and its sculpture since I was a child. As a stone sculptor, I can say that the granite of the Ramses head and figures is an extremely hard stone, and I believe tools much more durable than hardened copper chisels must have been used in the carving process. It would be necessary for me to upgrade my normal tools to carve such granite. My modern diamond blades and grinding points would be worn out before the head was started. The ancient carvers must have had advanced technology. Although the ancient Egyptians had stone chisels and hammers, which could cut the extremely hard granite, even with an army of disposable labour, completing 4 large sculptures exactly alike with hand tools would take more time than we can conceive of as possible. Modern man with all his modern tools would be challenged to finish 1 Ramses in a generous timeline. Creating 4 of them as large as they are, all the same, seems almost impossible. Best regards, Mike Leckie. End quote. So, what can we infer from all this? It should be clear at this point that there is utterly no chance these statues, the columns, or the precision boxes and vases could have been so precisely and repeatedly fabricated by a Bronze Age culture using the tools that are found in the archaeological record. An analysis of these objects isn't proof in and of itself for a lost civilization that predates the dynastic Egyptians, but it is pretty solid proof that they required forms of high technology to manufacture, regardless of whether or not we found any tools like that. At the same time, we need to balance this conclusion against the fact that we know an awful lot about the dynastic Egyptians. We know about their capabilities, about their daily lives, and we have their tools in the archaeological record, and none of it explains the manufacturing of these precision objects. Despite this, our academics insist that they built everything we see in ancient Egypt, but you just can't have this both ways. One of these 2 premises has got to give, which leaves us with some pretty simple options. Either we're completely, woefully incorrect about the capabilities and the tools of the early dynastic Egyptians, and they did in fact have advanced capabilities that rival our own, and they were able to make these precision objects. Or we're wrong in saying that they created them at all. To insist that both statements are true, that the dynastic Egyptians both made all of these objects and did so with the primitive tools of the Bronze Age, is logically inconsistent, and it makes no sense at all. Yet this contradiction is exactly the ground that our mainstream academic Egyptologists and archaeologists choose to occupy. Why do you think they don't want to discuss or investigate the nature of precision and technology evident in the manufacturing of these artifacts? Almost every expert who investigates these precision objects, the engineers, stonemasons, the architects, they all recognize the achievement they represent, and they inherently understand just how far out of a Bronze Age culture's reach that they are. By acknowledging that there's a degree of sophistication and high technology evident in these artifacts, then you're acknowledging that our current story for them just doesn't make any sense. Perhaps this is why it seems to be so difficult to get our academics' attention on this issue, as it leads to some very confronting questions for the orthodox story of history. Of course, there is a simple concept that can make sense of everything we see here. When you introduce the idea of inheritance, of longer timelines, of the rise and fall of ancient and lost high civilizations, when you look at the evidence for multiple levels of technology on these ancient sites, or if you really listen to what the Egyptians themselves said about their own past, then the facts as we know them can begin to make some sense. These ideas are supported by much new science in our modern times, with the extension of the human genetic timeline, and with the discovery of recent and devastating global cataclysms like the Younger Dryas. These ideas would be supported further, I think, with a full and honest assessment of what it might take to manufacture the remarkable and ancient precision objects that are still sitting right before our very eyes. When it comes to these mighty statues, remember that we label them as statues of Ramses II purely because he has his name carved into them. But whether or not they're actually statues of Ramses, and I don't think that they are undeniably and iconically Egyptian. Does this mean that the dynastic Egyptians made these statues? Or could it indicate that they inherited these objects and then built their civilization around these objects? They revered them, they modeled themselves after them. If I were an emerging Bronze Age culture and I came across these statues or boxes or columns, I might think these were direct representation of the work of the gods also. Yusuf Ayawan, master stonemason and expert guide, explains further.
The fact that we have the statues of dynastic Egyptians, no matter, we're not going to depend on the writings to date it and relate it, but the shape, the dress, everything is that culture. And it does have the power tools marking, like the tubular drill and the power like circular saw. That means we cannot separate the pyramid builders from them. But we can have something else. We can extend the timeline with more intermediate periods and more up and down of the civilizations. Probably the cataclysm will wipe everything off, and then they will inherit it, and of course, inherit it and rise again, or rebuild the civilization. Especially if you inherit lots, then it will be much easier to develop again. Maybe not the same, but to develop a lot, to understand a lot about the ancient Egyptian civilizations. Maybe they used these structures for initiations, or what we call magic, or what we call things like that. But still, it's a reuse.
All of history is ultimately conjecture at some point. We are always faced with the challenge of assembling a story from a very limited set of incomplete evidence. There are few truly definite things when it comes to our past, and new evidence that could change that story is unearthed all the time. I think that this evidence now supports a different conclusion and tells a different story about the very roots of human civilization on this planet, one that is longer and more traumatic than we ever thought possible. Even if this story raises more questions than it answers, I hope that more people can open their minds to see it and then pursue it wherever it leads. I know that I will be. Well, that's the end of part 2 of this series. There will be a part 3. I really wanted to make precision, and in particular the precision manufacturing aspects of all of these things in Egypt, its own video, but I still got to look at the walls in South America, Pumapunku, as well as the logistics and the methodologies used in trying to construct and move around some of those just giant blocks and walls and objects like the ones we see here. As always, I do want to say just a huge thank you to everybody that does support the channel. You guys are making a real difference in my ability to spend the time that it takes to research, write, and produce these videos, so thank you very much for that. If you are interested in supporting the channel, I try to run it on something called the value for value model. It goes along the lines of, if you get some value from this ultimately free content, please feel free to return some of that value to me, whatever you think it's worth. There's lots of ways to do that. You can find all those ways on unchartedx.com/support. I've got Patreon there, Subscribestar, PayPal. I even have a PO box set up now. I'm trying to do more and more content for everybody that signs up over there, including PayPal. I'll add your name to an email list, which you can opt out of if you want, but you get access to newsletters and update videos, things like that. I gave everybody a kind of a sneak peek the upcoming Egypt trip that I'm about to announce. So if you like a lot of these artifacts in this video, if you like Yusuf and the things he has to say, both of us will be in Egypt in December of this year. The trip should be announced, I think, in the next week on my website or so, but I went through the itinerary in some detail with everybody on Patreon, so keep your eyes open if you're interested in that, and otherwise I will see you guys all in the next video. Cheers.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. Yo, what up, bro? What up, broski? Download the TSMR app. Do it. Thank you, new chatters. Thank you, Cougar XC. And thank you, Salamander. Beastly Salamander, this one? Beastly, yeah. Download TSMR. Signed up a gym? Nice, buddy. Yes, dude. Download his app, do it. It's 25 cents. Demo's free. It's ASMR. It's dope. You can volume level per sound effect. It's the best. That's great, man. What did you figure out? What did you finalize? What was your final? You were trying to get a good deal. What did you finalize, my man? Tell me about it, if you want. Yeah, buddy. Big changes. Big changes this weekend, my man. It's the sun squaring Pluto in the weekend. It's a full moon. Yeah. Oh, no way. Really? Are you serious? What? That's dumb. It's not fair. We'll watch a China video, one more just to end it. So I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting on the Qingtao offer, man. This is the one I have the offer for, but it's no fucking Qingtao, let me tell you that. Oh well. So how to go to the gym that doesn't smell like balls with $50. Wow, nice, buddy. $50? It's like $12 a week. You go there twice a week, that's like $6. $6 an entrance. That's pretty good. If you go more than twice, it's even lower. Yeah, stash, dude. I don't know if you. I was gonna wait for the news. Tell the news, bro. But I might be moving to China, man. To China, comma, man. I was offered a teaching English job in this city with this drone in Dongying. And in Hong Kong. Thanks, buddy. I found them on teachaway.com. You need a bachelor's degree to get those jobs, which I think it's bullshit. I think it's dumb shit. China, man. Don't report me. Out there from California? Wow. Dude, I think they blocked Z's. Did they block Twitch in China? Just got blocked in China. No more gains for Chinese. Yeah, buddy, dude. And then I have a potential offer from this other city, which is insane. Dude. Dude, this fucking city. It looks like fucking Long Beach, man. Let me show you the Long Beach video. That's insane. Looks like South Africa. Drone beach. Yeah, this is a great video of it. So I might have an offer there. I'm waiting to hear back, man. Does that not look like fucking Venice Beach right there, you know? Him and his girl, nice. Yeah, I told my girlfriend about it. I sent all the info to my girlfriend. I want her to apply. Okay, now I'll play the other drone one. It's insane, man. Yeah, so yeah, dude, I have 5 offers. I've applied to like 2,000 jobs here over the last 2.5 years. I've had like 1 offer, which was awful. I already have 5 offers. I've 3 in Indonesia that I'm gonna turn down. They pay $1,200 a month, US, Canadian actually, and Korea's not blocked. Interesting. Korea is more free than China. Not surprising. How often? I don't know, my friend. But the cost of living is way lower in China. I got a lot of debt I gotta pay off. I'm making this decision because it pays well, and the debt and the cost of living is low. His wife there, wow, insane. Good, thanks, buddy. Yeah, you choose. So you on teachway.com, you apply. It's like LinkedIn for teaching English abroad. Got a few grand in the car. Right, of debt. I hear you, man. That's not bad, man. I'm in a lot. I've been out of work for like 2.5 years, but it's fine. It's been fun. I've lifted weights for most of that time. Yeah, buddy. That's where Tsingtao beer is made. So it was a German colony. This would be like the dream, man. This would be the fucking dream spot right here. A lot of people area. They're in these. Yeah, city of like 7 million or something insane. Thanks, man. I gotta pay off this debt. It'd be like teaching English, man, to little Chinese children. It's gonna be wild. Classes are like an hour long each, and it's not like a school where I see the same children for 8 hours. I'd be like, that would not be fun. Japan is small, yeah. Yeah, man, dude, look at this fucking place. It looks like fucking Cape Town, Miami, Long Beach, South Africa, Myrtle Beach. Oh my god, look at this. And they want people to go and stay for some time, like a long time. And I said, yo, if you give me an offer to the city, I will definitely fucking stay here. They do.
For 4 years now, and it's
They
absolutely
do, man.
beautiful.
The accent.
I have made many amazing memories here.
That's exactly why they hired me, man. It's
People
wild.
always ask,
I feel
why
so
Qingdao? Well,
privileged.
let me show you.
and I want to
Qingdao is
give
a
back.
coastal city in eastern Shandong province.
I feel valued
It
for the
is
first
15th
time
largest
professionally
city
in
China by
years.
population. Qingdao is a city of beer and immense history
Insane.
and
100
culture.
plus 4 plus
The
what?
cobbled streets,
Yeah,
German
their architecture's
architecture,
insane.
welcoming people, and
Oh, dude, I'm
mesmerizing
never fucking
sunsets
doing that.
by
No
the
way.
sea are all
The roads are
captivating.
bigger in
Let's not forget
in
about the
Qingdao. They're pretty
city's
small, but
diverse
in
food scene
Dongting, they're
and the
pretty big.
vast mountain ranges. Qingdao really does have it all. A vibrant city, yet a calming environment.
Yeah, man.
Beaches
So
to
that
relax,
Dongying offer,
mountains to admire the view.
I'm sitting on it, man,
Modern malls
and it's driving me
offer
crazy
local store
because it's a
rates.
fucking really good offer.
Qingdao
And
doesn't disappoint.
the recruiter's like, "Yeah, let's wait till next week," and I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I can wait another few more days." I like can't sleep because they're 12 hours ahead, so I'm like wake up in the middle of the night checking my emails and
In
shit.
Qingdao, you can indulge in a variety of outdoor activities, such as hiking,
Truck blind
swimming,
spots, yeah.
cycling along
Oh,
the
it's fucked,
shoreline,
dude.
and
It's so
strolling
fucked.
through local parks. I particularly enjoy hiking. There are several different mountains
Dang.
to hike, all with great
Good to know.
views.
And the Chinese
The
lorry.
most famous is Laoshan Scenic Area, and it is easily accessible. There are cable cars if you don't wish to walk all
Yeah,
the
man, this
way.
looks like fucking
This is the best
California,
option for
Cape
tourists,
Town.
as there are several peaks varying in difficulty.
Yeah, I
and plenty
figured.
of stores along
I saved the
way.
image. Drink some water.
Yushan is a local mountain situated near the city center. It is much smaller than Laoshan and convenient to hike if you are short on time. You can get to the top within 2 hours. I usually hike Yushan in the early morning to enjoy breakfast.
And I I accepted a Hong Kong offer too, and I sent my documents for the visa today as like a backup. Because they both pay the same amount, but Hong Kong is extremely expensive to live in. It's like one of the most expensive cities. So in China, you can live on your own in an apartment, but in Hong Kong, you have to share an apartment, which would like fucking not be good. Fucking at the age of 38 years old. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, man. With Monkey Tree English centers, English learning centers. So it's after school. Usually hours are like 2 p.m. to like 8 p.m. or like 12 to 8, and on the weekends. And you get Monday, Tuesday off, which is great. Because imagine going to the beach on like a Monday or Tuesday, it'd be insane.
More than 3 kilometers, and there are many tourist attractions.
No, oh man, dude. I do have. I'm blessed. I'm really blessed. I do have a hot chick. I'm really blessed. I'm lucky. So I mean, you know, that's the thing. I also want to go to a place that's like nice, that will entice, that will want my girlfriend to move to and visit. Like, oh my god, look at this. Oh my god. Oh, I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying now. I understand what you're saying. If I went to Hong Kong with the hot chick, yeah, that'd be insane. That would be trouble though, man. Cause you're sharing with teachers, dude. That's the thing. You're rooming with other teachers, so you're literally eating where you're shitting, which is where you're fucking. That's like the trifecta of disaster. In China. That'd be nightmare. So I did as a backup, right? And I'm gonna have to cancel. Cause I mean, I don't know. And what if I hate it? What if I move to China and I fucking hate it? He's staying? Who's Ollie? Who the fuck's Ollie? Who are these people? Spoach? Spoach. In Taiwan. Must be good. Yeah, but he has like a Taiwanese girlfriend, right? I couldn't do it. Yeah, you're in Miami though, man. Like I don't have to be in Miami. East China, yeah, you're right. Just like same. Insane. Yeah, crazy skyscrapers. It looks like. The two sittings. So the offer I have is Dongying. The one I might have is Qingdao, which is this one. I'm not gonna eat no fucking starfish though. And so Dongying is like a smaller city, would just be really just to make money, and I'd be a hero there. Not to, honestly, I would be. It would be like I would be a. They would really value me. They would value me more in Dongying, and I already received that offer. Both are really good though. What's his name? Jake? Yo, what's his name? Stash? What is this? Oh, blind spots, yeah. Jake. Jake? That's his name, Jake?
If you haven't visited Qingdao yet, I highly recommend you do.
Dude, and the sun sets over the water, it'd be insane. It'd be ridiculous. And there's this video of a guy walking through Dongying, this video. This video is fucking hilarious. This is someone driving through Dongying. This video is pretty depressing. But this one's pretty good, this guy. This will be me.
Hey, you guys see me. Hey, welcome to the stream. And you guys are in Dongying City. This is a very unpopular city here in China. I will tell you what I discovered on my way here last night on the slow train. But I just want to show you guys this. This is like a tier 4 city.
Alright, I'm gonna sign off.
Well, a lot of people
I'm actually gonna sign off now, but I'm gonna skim through this quickly.
say this is a tier. Let me go back to my story from.
You know, it's so chill. It's a very chill
last night.
city.
Speaks very good English. Not gonna lie, around 10 of them. Air pollution is bad. Told me. You guys can see for yourself. And number 2, it's a beautiful day. The sun is out. It's shining. It's nice and hot. But they've got an E on their to work abroad once they the fields and the countrysides to build up. And they build up the countrysides. Go there to see that. High-end cars standing here. Okay, well, this is normal cars over here, but I promise you, like that BMWs over there.
Yeah, so Dongying is like, there's this Shengli oil field. Apparently there's like a lot of rich people in Dongying. It's like the new, they call it the Chinese Dubai in terms of oil, but it's not like as nice as Dubai. But thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. Oh, his YouTube channel. Oh, nice, man. Okay, on YouTube, okay. Jake in China. Alrighty. Yeah, my friends. So, you know, I told my parents, obviously, and it looks like it's gonna be a reality,
Great
my
to
friends.
farm in it. We are used to.
Look at
in
that.
bigger
See,
cities.
like, that looks pretty nice, man.
It feels like these That's what they told me. That accepted
And
our
dude, both cities look like amazing skateboarding cities. I would literally just skate everywhere. It'd be
order.
amazing.
And guys to
Look
get
at
onto the
that.
Didi. And I democratic city, but they do have more power. And these guys, if they don't want Didi, biggest oil, bit more open, like I say, I think that's really slick. Little. It's also so cool at the same time. I guess what makes it cool is there's not a lot of people. Oh. How cool is this?
The Merc.
Wow. Hello. Hello. Friendly people everywhere. So yeah.
Cars are nicer than
Guys,
Ottawa.
I don't know. You guys let me know what the title of this video is going to be. Because I don't know. But yeah, you are in Dongying.
Not even capping.
I just want to say the air quality doesn't look that bad to me. In fact, it's very clear. But maybe I'm just lucky today. I don't know.
Mark.
But yeah, this is not
Move
your
to
typical
China.
city, my friends. Let me tell you that. And like I said, this is a population, the city's got a population of 2 million people in it. Yeah, it's kind of strange, but yet so cool. So what I'm going to do now
Jake
is, as you see,
and
taxis
Bake
everywhere, man.
live.
they
Alright,
run
we'll
the
play some.
city,
We'll play one of those videos. This video is
These
not
taxis,
definitely not
they
Jake
run
and
the
Bake.
show. Check this out.
Dude, that quote is
this
insane.
out.
I'm gonna add that as a quote.
Check that.
Hey, I'm Jake,
Shenzhen.
also known as Jake and Bake Live. Welcome to my channel. I live stream my travels and share unique experiences around the globe.
Shenzhen.
I'm here to show you the world through my eyes and inspire you to get out there and see what an amazing place it truly is.
Because he streams his lives. Yeah. YouTube is dumb. What is this? Shenzhen.
Oh, wow, look at that, dude.
Wow. Pretty.
Do you know how to say corn?
Corn.
Suck my balls.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Okay.
What the hell is... This is for the Panda Hot Pot place, boys.
Oh, he's on
Oh,
Twitch. I understand his
oh,
name on
oh.
Twitch. That makes sense. Jake and Bake Live. Jeez, I'm an idiot. I'm just so dumb. Cool, man. Thanks, buddy. Holy shit, he's got a lot of viewers. Look at all the views. What is this, man? Holy shit, dude. I mean, I'm not hating on him. I'm saying, like, maybe my channel's gonna explode if I move to China. To China. Shooting hoops? Oh my god, this guy is like me. This guy's literally me. Okay, I don't run like that, though.
You're stuck over there. Seriously, it's kind of funny. Hey,
I was insane. Oh,
Came
yeah.
through it. Came to 79 long term, baby.
Why is water angry again? Because you are not soft.
That's true. I'm angry too.
Suck
I'm
my
with you, Jake. No, it's not about like.
stream almost every day. What?
It's not about that. It's just like,
Insane. So you
realize
can
why
stream
you're
in Twitch. What does he do? Does he have a VPN, or is he allowed to stream in Shenzhen because it's close to Hong Kong or something?
Mungaloo. 20 months. Chat. Today's a crazy. Today's a very.
Road to
special
visit?
day.
Yeah,
You guys see
buddy.
the title?
Yeah,
He's gonna
dude,
do
the
a little
basketball
walk,
scene,
a little wild.
the outdoor basketball scene is, oh, it's fucking,
Today's
it's like
gonna be big,
Miami.
called the Katonas. Yo, Jake, did you see the picture made
Wow.
of the China crew as dogs?
Cool,
I
bro.
did not see that. Damn, that tooth is very yellow today.
Oh, we're gonna save this too.
You know, this guy's like Spoach. This guy's like a mix between like, he looks like me,
Alright.
But his streams look like Spochi's streams. His girlfriend looks exactly like Spochi's girlfriend. But they're both very pretty. Where's the basketball? What is this? Is this bait and switch? What? I don't want to see these people talk. Whatever. Scam. 6 fucking hours? Holy shit, dude.
Echo, thanks for 37 months. Madison, thank you. Fish cake, thank you guys.
6 hour stream. I guess I was doing that in Miami. No fucking basketball though.
Chat, I want to go sit in the
Lies.
crazy luxury car, so please help Jake to reach the sub goal so we can rent the.
Or did I push the wrong one? Whatever. Chengdu. So it's in China, in Chengdu. I was like in the center. It's like a massive city in the center of China. I didn't know anything about it. So we'll end on this.
The C-pop idol, isn't it? Yeah, you gotta scream. I mean, they're
California raises his Porsche allowance and better get coffee. Over 6 hours.
What the hell's a mosh pit?
Alright, we're gonna read somebody new. Thanks for being here.
That was crazy, guys. Welcome to the stream.
Oh my god! Dude, look at this tattoo!
Dude, look at that. Look at that, guys.
This place is awesome.
I love this place. This is the barbecue roast pork. You guys know char siu pork with egg and rice.
Woo! Woo! Perfect. There's a fat one for you guys.
The price of this food, this bowl is
29 RMB.
$4.
What does the A stand for? Asshole?
It stands for her new last name. Give me sauce.
My hair?
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's fun. Don't break it. Do it already.
You're the best water.
You're welcome.
Dude, what is this? Another Chinese eating?
Okay, I think his
Look at
streams.
this. What is this?
His streams are better than his videos, I think. Let me,
What is this? Look at the
go back to
lights.
this
Look at the hearts on the freaking.
Oh, this.
Show you guys the Shanghai fabric market. It's a wild spot where you can get whatever clothes you want made from whatever fabrics you want. So I'll let the chat pick out a few summer outfits for me. Fabric market's where
Oh, well, yeah.
Susie's made back when I had
No, it's all good. I'm not hating. It just caught me off guard.
called Susie's. Half suit, half jersey, all class. That was her tagline.
The DJ's still playing. We gotta rate the DJ.
But it's okay. Fabric market's a very cool spot. But yeah, we're in the touristy
He's
area.
addicted.
We're gonna walk
He's
down
addicted to the
Gyges,
perfect dark.
Street. I do want to go to KFC at some point.
Oh, he's on fucking Goldeneye again. It's fine.
What were you telling me? It's like a peanut butter.
It's fine. Thanks for being here, bros. Appreciate it, bros.
Two different burgers. The gross one is I think it's a peanut butter pineapple bacon burger. Want to get one open door? Yeah, Chinese bacon's a little flimsy. Yep. And the bun is has like it's like I don't know stamped with like a it looks like a basketball. It's a basketball bun. Okay. I think KFC is like a sponsor with Barstool, so I'm sure it's gonna be absolutely delicious. Yeah. Yo, Gyges, great. Shit. You know, man. So these like I'm sure. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. All right, cool. Yeah, you get a lot of domestic tourists. They all come here to see the sights. Where are they from? Oh, did he say Key West?
I think it's US.
Oh, really? Really? He makes the Megwa Rim? Oh, okay. All right, cool. Yep. American. We've got some foreign tourists too. Dude, that's a sick tracksuit that the guy has over there. Do you want to start making our way down the pedestrian streets? It is.
If I could do like a little intro for my.
Yeah, for sure.
On everything.
So we're live on my YouTube. We're also live on the Jake and Bake Twitch. hello everybody. I'm just depends on what side you're on. This stream is currently being broadcast to Wonton Don's YouTube live. It's also on my Twitch channel, so I wanted to share this experience with them. It's only Don's like second live stream ever, and in China. So I'll mainly be cameraman with a little bit of fun. I don't know, have fun together. But anyways, just wanted to say thank you guys for being here. If you're on my stream or Don's stream, hope you guys enjoy a little adventure around Shanghai today, showing you guys around the sights. And if you guys don't know, on Twitch, for my viewers real quick, we separate the viewers sometimes. If you don't know him, he watched a lot of his videos during COVID. I used to watch his videos like over 10 years ago when I lived in China. He's like a guy that used to be in China making crazy, fun, original, like hilarious content that I really looked up to and was a fan of, and now I got to meet him, and it was fucking awesome. Now I'm gonna be his cameraman, and we're gonna hang out in Shanghai together. It's like playing, 21 with Michael Jordan. So that's how I'm viewing this in the content creation realm.
Dude, appreciate hearing that. Glad I could inspire you. And thank you for helping me. I wouldn't be able to be going live in China